The years of 1917 to 1939 were rough, to say the least, for the US economy. It was also hugely detrimental for American culture and the general social atmosphere. It was so bad, in fact, that historically we call it the Great Depression. You might have heard of it. If you had to guess what was one of the most profitable or popular or impactful industries during the Great Depression, you might think of non-perishable foods or textiles or something. And while that is right, one of the most popular and impactful industries during the Great Depression was the film industry. And it might seem insane that the people behind the cameras were making more money than the people behind the banks. And you're right, it is. But the film industry provided a lot for people during the Great Depression. In fact, it seems like it was necessary for whatever growth we can take away from culture during the Great Depression. The reason behind the positive impact of the film industry during the Great Depression comes down to three big parts: the escapism it provided through the films, the representation it provided for the people watching the films, and the jobs it provided through being a profitable industry, no matter what bumps in the road may occur. So, let's talk about it. I think escapism is one of the most understandable reasons why the film industry was so impactful to so many people. Imagine you were in the Great Depression. Like, it's the 1930s, you barely gotten a job, you used to be homeless, and every day it's just the same grind over and over and over again to stay afloat, to keep having money so you're not homeless again. It'd be kind of nice to just sit down at the end of the day, at the end of the week even, just have a chance to just kind of escape everything, get your mind off everything and watch a movie about something completely different. And that very reason led to the rise of screwball comedy, which was a subgenre of comedy, wouldn't have guessed it, that delves into the idea of kind of making fun of societal expectations and social perception and social reception of kind of traditional norms. A big one is relationships, but there is some variation there. One of the most popular screwball comedies from the time was My Man Godfrey, a movie from 1936. The movie follows Godfrey, a homeless man who gets picked up by a rich family for some kind of freak showcase. He's understandably annoyed by this, tries to leave. He gets picked up as the family butler to, have a job so he's not homeless anymore. But Irene, the girl who picked him out to be the butler, ends up falling in love with him, but he wants to keep it strictly professional, so he keeps his job. This is where some of the screwball comedy aspects I was talking about shows up, because he tries so hard to get her to not like him in so many ways. There's just so many things in this movie that surprisingly hold up. I really did not expect a movie from 89 years ago to be this funny still.
May I be frank?
Is that your name?
Well, my name is Godfrey.
All right, be frank.
And it's definitely understandable as a form of escapism. I mean, audiences loved it. This is a very successful movie. As cynical as it might be, the movie shows examples of some pretty unrealistic things happening. Like, throughout the entire movie, Godfrey had this B plan to get enough funds from the family's stocks to turn the dump that he used to live in into a lively swingers club with musicians and dancing and food. He even has his own office in the same place where his old shack used to be. It's kind of wild, but it makes sense for a movie that's supposed to be very hopeful and kind of drawing your attention away from anything negative. Pretty much what I'm saying is that this movie was really popular for the reason you can expect. It's funny, it's silly, but it still encompasses the reality that people had to live in. That's something that kind of hit home about this movie. It's not afraid to tell the truth sometimes, even though it is kind of living in an optimistic world.
Mike, I wouldn't worry. Prosperity's just around the corner.
Yeah, it's been there a long time. I wish I knew which corner.
Even Godfrey as a character is kind of an idealistic representation of what an average man might be at the time. He's someone who did have good fortunes and a good job that got him good money, but he fell into hard times and started living at the dump. Through a very convoluted and weird process, he got back his money. The kind of mantra of the movie is rags to riches and then back again, which I thought initially was going to be something about Godfrey was just going to go right back into poverty after the whole thing happened. It didn't though, and he ended up having more money than he ever had before. It's a very idealistic and kind of a fun way to end a movie, especially set during this time when hope was at an all-time low. And that leads pretty smoothly into the next point, representation. I think representation is also pretty understandable as a reason why film would be so impactful to people. In most respects, it's pretty cool to see yourself in a movie. Not literally, but figuratively is the main point. Seeing someone on the screen who represents you, someone who has the same beliefs or the same attributes or is going through the same struggles as you, that's extremely impactful. And that's part of the reason why the film industry touched so many people. And no film from the era represents that more brutally than Wild Boys of the Road. This movie follows Eddie, Tommy, and later Sally on their journey across the whole country to find work. Unlike My Man Godfrey, this is an action drama, putting these characters through some of the most rigorous circumstances possible, many of which were experienced by the cast and crew. In that way, this film is a great form of representation for people who were genuinely struggling at the time during the Great Depression. Mostly because this movie is just relentless. We start on two high school age young adults who are living a pretty good life. Then the cracks start to show. The very, very real cracks. Like, oh, turns out Tommy's dad died and his mom hasn't had a job in a long time. Oops, and it turns out Eddie's dad has just lost his job, so now they gotta save their finances. They both agree that it would be the best option to leave home and try to find a job in Chicago. Along the way, they meet Sally, a girl who dresses as a boy most of the time to avoid sexual harassment and prejudice.
He's a she!
This is when the movie kind of turns into a different beast. Now it's not just about throwing struggles at these two kids for an hour. No, it's about representation of actual social issues like misogyny. It seems that Sally's aunt has a job opportunity for all three of them in Chicago. But when they actually get to her house, they realize that she's got a secret operation running to get more money. And her house gets raided by the police, so they gotta scram and head to a different town, picking up some other homeless, jobless teenagers along the way. This kind of pattern of just struggle after struggle after struggle continues for the whole movie. Even with Tommy's leg getting run over by a train and permanently skewing the trajectory of the rest of their plan. In this regard, the film does a great job at making its characters likable and making you feel for them. Not only do you feel bad for Tommy, who just lost his leg, but also you have a newfound respect for Eddie, who has gone out of his way to run from the police to steal a prosthetic leg from a store. He cares for his friend that much that he goes out of his way to steal a very expensive item from a very guarded area. Towards the end of the movie, our three main characters situate themselves in New York, which, according to Eddie, is a great opportunity for jobs. And he's right. He actually does get a job operating an elevator, but he needs to buy the uniform for the job before he can start working. The three of them band together to try to collect as much money as they can through whatever means necessary to get him his suit. But some guys that only see him as a beggar trick him and gets him arrested. Just another struggle for these poor kids. But at the end of their trial, the judge decides to discard charges for all three of them. He even helps them in trying to find jobs in the local area. This happy ending was extremely unexpected after the last hour of witnessing these kids getting beaten into the dirt. As it turns out, the director, William Wellman, originally had a different ending in mind, where all three kids get arrested on full charges and the judge watches tearfully as they get driven away in a police car. It was only after another member of the crew stepped in to change the ending that we got the one we ended up with. Wellman actually seemed to be a pretty extreme director for this project. Having gone through many of the struggles represented in the movie on his own to find work during the Depression, he wanted to make sure all of these problems were represented fairly and realistically. This meant having the actual real child actors jumping on and off moving trains and act out a full police riot. When it gets to the point of the movie where our three mains are leading a whole town of homeless teenagers, apparently most of those extras were actual homeless teenagers that were hired just to be in the movie. This makes any kind of victory seem that more impactful. Despite what unethical practices may have been in the production of the movie, it was extremely socially aware of its surroundings and the real world events that it was representing. Because of this, it even got documented and archived in the National Film Preservation Board for its social consciousness. After seeing what this movie contains and represents, it makes sense that people would be so strongly impacted by this movie when they had faced these struggles themselves in their own lives. This is why representation is one of the biggest reasons why the film industry was so impactful during the Great Depression. The film industry, being extremely popular and profitable, became kind of a beacon of reliability in the job market. In an environment where people could be rich out of their mind one day and then homeless the next, having an industry that is consistently making new jobs every day creates an environment of trust. I mean, the late 20s to 40s were literally called the golden age of Hollywood, making it a little pedestal of prosperity in a work environment that generally sucked. As more and more films were being made, more ambitious directors were having higher and higher needs for more extras, a bigger crew, more camera operators. On top of that, the idea of being a movie star, being someone that's consistently in multiple films, being a big name became a thing during this era. Of course, it wasn't all good, and one of those not good things was a major shift in the way the content in films was judged. And this was the Hays Codes. The Hays Codes were a strict series of guidelines of what could and couldn't be in a film based on ethical difficulties with viewers and critics. It was published in 1930 but wasn't strictly enforced until 1934, making a pretty clear, visible division between pre-code and post-code films. Initially, the codes made it very difficult to make anything, with directors and writers having to make rough versions of their films to go review with a committee and then come right back to make changes to it. But after a while, they started figuring out how to work around it. Screwball comedy was one of the major genres that prevailed from this change, finding little replacements for things that may have been restricted by the codes. My Man Godfrey came out in 1936 and was wildly successful and very high quality. My point is that even in an environment that was keeping them down, these film producers and directors kept bouncing back with these very high quality films that kept making new jobs. The film industry was incredibly reliable as a place to find work. As the crew for making these films got bigger and bigger with every film released, it would be easy to roll up and just ask if they needed help, which is one of the reasons why the film industry was directly impactful to the people looking for work during the Great Depression. Overall, the film industry was incredibly impactful to people during the Great Depression. There was escapism within the films, comedy being one of the most popular genres at the time, allowing people to take a break from the struggles of the real world to just sit back and laugh. It was also great for representation of major social issues at the time, allowing directors and writers to put formerly unspoken voices on the big screen. But in the literal sense, it was also a source of work. As more and more films were being made, there was a demand for more and more people to be working in the industry. All in all, the film industry had a great positive impact for people during the Great Depression. Historically, it's a necessary part of any of the positive cultural growth that might have come out of the Great Depression.